Today we have a very special guest all the way from Austria. Robin is the host of a new and growing podcast, Robin Seyr, Daily Bitcoin Podcast. Welcome to the Bitcoin Edge, Robin.
Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here, and thank you for the kind words.
Well, it's wonderful to see you. Let's start by finding out a little bit about you. Tell us about your background and how you discovered Bitcoin at such a young age.
Yeah, it's fascinating because most young people go first into crypto and altcoins and less about Bitcoin. So they first try to figure out, how can I do with that gamble meme coin? What can I do with that? So I found very early on Bitcoin only. Like the first time I heard about Bitcoin was with now 4 years ago. I was 22, 21, around that age. Then the first time I heard about it was earlier, but that's when I first got into Bitcoin. So since I'm 22 years old, I'm all in Bitcoin, which is, I think, one of the most amazing life advantages that I will experience when I'm 35, 40, 45. Right now, doesn't make a huge difference because the capital and the income when you're young is smaller. I'm just trying now to build up things, but even the small amounts that you can save in Bitcoin will make huge dents in the future. So being Bitcoin only from such a young age with 21, 22 years old makes a huge difference. And also how I came to Bitcoin was basically since I'm 18 years old, I'm trying to figure out finances. I'm trying to figure out where can I put my money, where can I put my financial energy. My first, it's a cute story. My grandma gave me 500 euros. And I was like, first time I get money, better figure out what to do with it because the other money was just pocket money from my parents. And pocket money was never a lot from my parents. It was just enough so I can buy a little bit extra sweets and a little bit extra things. And then my grandma, here, 500 euros. And I'm like, oh shit, what do I do with that money now? Because I was a very frugal guy, even from the very early age. I can remember when I was at preschool or even kindergarten, and I got like 2 euros or 3 euros from my mom to buy a small bread in the lunch break. I saved 1 euro of that 3 euros. Because I was kind of knowing like, if I have now 1 euro more, in a few weeks, I have like 10, 20 euros. I can spend it on something that I really want. And I don't have to ask permission from my mom and dad. So like from a very young age, I got why saving makes sense. Obviously, I chose a very bad savings vehicle, but if you're just saving a few euros, I guess it does not matter that much. And I got that from a very young age. So with 18, I tried to figure out what do I do with my finances, went into ETFs. I went into individual stocks. Individual stocks did really good for me. I picked Tesla, Facebook, Apple. In the period of time that I went into those, I made with a very small capital, a little bit more capital. Like if you start very small, it doesn't accumulate to a lot if you just invest in public stocks. But it gave me kind of a start to my life. It was nice to have this kind of more financial energy than most people have. So then I came to Bitcoin because I was successful with my investments, and more people kept asking me about the Bitcoin thing. For 3 years straight, I said, it's a scam. I don't like it. It's nothing that I will ever get into. The Warren Buffett child of like, have to have a value, a cash flow value in an asset, so you can put a multiple on that. Obviously, Bitcoin has no cash flow and also no yield. So if someone sells you a yield on Bitcoin, it's probably a scam. Was difficult for me to figure out. It was from 2017 to 2020. So from 2020, this 3 years range where I was saying to all my friends and my relatives, I mean, not that many people asked, but to all my friends that kept me asking, Bitcoin is a scam. Then I discovered that I did not have a lot of arguments for that. And I wanted to prove a friend of mine wrong. it was a weekend where I was like, okay, let's find some good arguments why Bitcoin is a scam. Let's dig into the negative side of Bitcoin. And in that weekend, from Friday, I went into Bitcoin is a scam. On Sunday, I went out. I was like, oh, I might be wrong here. Monday, I bought a ledger. Monday, I opened my Coinbase account, which I don't recommend right now. Tuesday, I bought a ledger, which I don't recommend right now. But I got self-custody the second day I got Bitcoin, which is a very important thing. Like, don't wait with self-custody till you are filthy rich with Bitcoin. Like, do self-custody before you get rich, before you have a major wealth in Bitcoin. That was kind of my short story, even it's already been long. That's my short story, how I got into Bitcoin and who am I.
So in a way, you were perfect for Bitcoin. Do you think that was just in you, or did your parents kind of instill that in you to take care of your financial future?
I think it comes from my parents. It probably comes a lot from my dad, honestly, because he was not poor, but he was not from a wealthy family. So when he got out of school, he was working for a few years, but then he actually started his own company with friends. Starting a company, everyone who ever started a company probably has a similar story where you have to be very frugal the first couple of years, and you have to take risks, and you maybe have to also risk a lot. And then there's also, with my dad, there were kids very soon involved. Like when he started the company, I was 6 years old or something like that. And then also my sister. So he had 2 kids, starting a new company, not a lot of wealth. So in that regard, you have to be extremely frugal. It's not something nice. It's just something that you have to do. And I think experienced that as a kid. And also my dad built a house with my mom together in that period of time. So company building, house building, 2 kids. And also my mom was working part-time, my dad full-time. So this was kind of the situation. So my mom and my dad knew they have to be frugal to make it, to pay the credit and everything. So it was kind of instilled in me because my parents were very frugal. And that's why I think I got that because my parents were not like, oh, let's throw money around left and right. So I think that's probably a big part of that. I did not sit down with a psychology person to analyze it to the deepest level. But if I had to analyze it, it's probably coming from my parents just having to be frugal and instilling that in me and having that, like, every cent and every euro is something worth. And if you throw around €1, then you don't have that €1 that you could do something better. You could buy a house, you could buy now Bitcoin with it. So that mindset followed me, fortunately, since my life. Like, there were some interesting moments in my life where I can remember when I was like a teenager, where my dad was already way more well off, and he already had a successful big company with a lot of employees also, where we went in this great house, and we had we're not wealthy, not rich, but we were good off, like middle class. And I went in the bathroom, turned on and then starting brushing my teeth and leaving the shower on. And then, like, after that, I planned to go to shower. My dad came in, like, why did you let the shower run? Like, that's money, right? Close the shower, open the shower when you're in there. So like, there's like 100 more small stories that I could tell, but it was just instilled in me from small age till I moved out, basically. Even though they're well off now, it's still in there. And I think that's a great lesson. I think Warren Buffett is like, even though he doesn't like Bitcoin, and you should not take advice when it comes to Bitcoin to him, living a frugal life, Warren Buffett still has the same house that he has with, I think, since age 28. He pretty much drives the same car. He still goes to McDonald's, which I don't recommend, but he does not live a fancy life. And I think that's a learning that we can take from him and maybe also from me, that even though you have wealth, don't spend it around, because maybe that's just a season, and maybe there's a harder season coming, and then you're very happy that you saved up something. And that savings mentality Bitcoin incentivizes that. I see more and more people that come into Bitcoin, and all of a sudden they're adopting Bitcoin, and that's why they adopt that savings mindset. And I feel like that's why I maybe had a head start in Bitcoin. I did not gamble with I did gamble a little bit with shitcoins, but only with a very small amount and very short duration, like not even half a year. So I got rid of that really quickly. And that gave me a massive head start in life. Like, I'm so grateful for my parents that do that exact what they did. That has been great. Yeah.
Yes, you remind me, when we're living on more and more in the Bitcoin standard, if I spend my Bitcoin today, it must be something I really like or want, because most likely in the future it's going to be worth more. So it makes us think about whether we want to just spend on something just to have it. So I appreciate that answer. You know, you mentioned that maybe the euro and the dollar now are not the best ways to save. Does inflation affect you in Austria?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have the euros. I mean, there are always the official inflation rates, but there's also just you go to the supermarket and you're like, oh, that's a little bit more expensive. I was playing mini golf, like golf, but just like very small. Probably everyone knows mini golf with my girlfriend last weekend. And on the website, there was written for adults, it costs €5 per play. And then I was going there, it was already €6. And even on Google, it was €5. So like you can see inflation on small amounts there, small amounts there. And I think the best way to calculate real inflation, if you look at the stock market and if you look at housing markets, because like a house, everyone needs to live in. So like rents, measuring how much is rent going up and how much is a house price going up. That's where you see the real inflation, and that's where you like see the 10, 20, in some areas 30, 50%. Some areas, if you're really near to a major lake where everyone wants to live there can be inflation rate of 80% for a house or even more. But yeah, for real estate, I don't have to tell you about that. I think that's a way more better way to look at inflation, because the inflation baskets, they adopt the inflation baskets. You can also say they manipulate the inflation basket. I think everyone noticed inflation, but euro and Austria is way better than Turkey, but still bad. Like inflation is still, the central bank is still stealing wealth from us. So I think that's a bad thing from that. And I think, as you said before, when we live on a Bitcoin standard, what this inflation does with us is really interesting, because most people save in fiat. Most people don't have a lot of wealth. Most people don't own and Bitcoin and bonds and equity and everything like that. Most people just have a little bit of savings in their savings account. And I know a lot of people that are over 50 years old, and the only thing they have are their euros in their bank accounts. And I'm like, how can you sleep at night? How can you do that? So those are, by the way, also the same people that ask me how I can sleep with all my money in Bitcoin, and I ask them, how can you sleep with all your money in euros? Like that would freak me out. But if you have all your money in fiat, and let's say the inflation rate is only 10%, this means if you buy something now, it's better than you buy something in 1 year, because then the money that you save is less worth. It's 10% less worth. So the faster you spend, the better it is. In extreme cases, we see it in Turkey, we see it in Venezuela, we see it in many other countries where it's way more worse than it's right now in Austria, where people, as soon as they get the salary, they storm to the supermarkets and buy whatever they can find, because they know that their currency is nothing worth, and it's better to have toilet paper than the fiat currency, because the toilet paper is more stable than a fiat currency. So that is ridiculous. And on the other side, if you have a Bitcoin standard where your wealth is just increasing over time, your purchasing power is just increasing over time, you know, if I spend now €1,000 on a new iPhone, that is probably a bad decision, because next year on the same, I might be able to buy 2 iPhones for the same amount, and the 2 iPhones have had a technology in them. You all of a sudden question everything in your buying and purchasing strategies. And that's I think one major change that will change when we have a Bitcoin standard, when we have a Bitcoin standard where everyone transacts and thinks in Bitcoin.
So are you starting to think more in Bitcoin, or do you still price Bitcoin in euros?
That's really hard. The Bitcoin price I follow in US dollars, not because I care about US dollars, because I don't spend US dollars, I only spend euros. But the only reason why I follow the US dollar price in Bitcoin is because the US dollar is the last currency standing properly. Probably when fiat currencies collapse, the US dollars will be the last one standing. We already see that I think 67 countries or something like that use the US dollars because they don't have their own currency. They rather rely on the US dollar. That's why El Salvador adopted our Bitcoin standard, because they're like, let's better adopt the currency, an asset that is not controlled by anyone before it's controlled by someone else. Because we cannot have a currency, we are too weak for that. Let's adopt Bitcoin, which nobody can control, instead of the US dollars, which the central bank in America can control. And with that, what the USA also does with that, they're exporting their inflation to the other nations, which is amazing business model for the USA, but is not as good for the people that have US dollars. So that's why I, for example, measure Bitcoin in US dollars. The way, the even better way to measure Bitcoin adoption is when you measure it against gold. I really like measuring the Bitcoin adoption in gold. So like how much is one Bitcoin against gold? I think that's a very interesting metric to look at, and to see how the adoption is really going, and not just, we inflate the US dollars. Of course, Bitcoin is going up, but you have to adjust it for inflation. How much is Bitcoin going up against gold? That's a great metric to look at. But in terms of looking at Bitcoin as a unit of account, like looking Bitcoin as do I think in Bitcoin? It's hard, because every supermarket prices things in euros. So I think in euros. I go and think of like, okay, what does it, like right now I'm thinking a little bit of, can I move my physical existence to another country? And I'm like, okay, let's figure out living expenses. Let's figure out license costs. Let's figure out how much the citizenships cost and stuff like that. And I calculate that back in euros when it's from another country. So I just have to be honest, and I still think in euros, because it's my everyday currency and I pay most things in euros. So that switch to Bitcoin or Satoshis, or to some other unit inside of Bitcoin, micro Bitcoin, I saw in a wallet one day, and we probably, when we have a Bitcoin standard, need something beneath Satoshis also. That's still a way to go. Like that's a long way to go. But when I think in Bitcoin is in net worth. When I think of like how much am I worth, then I'm thinking Bitcoin, because I think that's the measurement to be true to yourself. Because if you now, let's say you have 0.8 Bitcoin as net worth, your net worth is in that moment 80 million Satoshis, which is amazing amounts to have. And everyone who has that or similar or close to that is like, will be very lucky to have that in like 10, 20, 50 years. But if you measure it in US dollars, it goes up 2x, it goes up 4x. Then all of a sudden you're like, I'm a genius. No, you're not. You still have your 0.8 Bitcoin. Your purchasing power might went up, but you should work harder to get even more Bitcoins. It motivates me a lot to work on how do I get more Satoshis? How do I get more Bitcoin in my wallet? And not of thinking like, oh, how do I get more US dollars? Because getting more US dollars is at that point easy. Just not losing any of my Bitcoin, and the US dollars go up and go up and go up over time. So I think when I think of my net worth, I think in Bitcoin. But when I think about everyday expenses, purchases I do, when I think of like, oh, how much will that be in supermarkets and in whatever, even for my sponsorships, I give the prices in euros. I calculate for sponsorships for my podcast in euros, even though one of my sponsors even pays me in Bitcoin. Like they pay me in Bitcoin, but we still have, because it's easier, because everyone has the euro price, I price them in euros, and then whenever they pay that amount in euros, and then we convert it. Then it's Bitcoin transaction, and then just we determine that. So when I just be honest, I don't think a lot in Bitcoin terms, only in wealth.
Well, that kind of makes a lot of sense. You mentioned the future. Where do you see Bitcoin in 2034 and 2044? And do you think we will be then using Bitcoin much more as a payments method too?
I mean, first off, it will be different from country to country, and some countries will be quicker. We have in Switzerland, in Lugano, you can pay almost everything in Bitcoin already. You can pay your taxes in Bitcoin. In El Salvador, you can kind of live in a Bitcoin standard. In Nigeria, the adoption is really already far. And then you're in Austria, for example, not that far away from Lugano, and there are some shops where you can pay with Bitcoin, but not a lot. You cannot pay your taxes in Bitcoin. There are still capital gains tax on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is not globally always on the same pace. That's very important to note. That's why also I think as a Bitcoiner, you should care about politics, because maybe Bitcoin doesn't care about politics, but Bitcoiner should care a little bit about politics and where they are, because they might have a way better condition as a Bitcoiner somewhere else in some other country. So with that being said, with that disclaimer in front, think at 2044, so like right around in 20 years, I think Bitcoin will be globally accepted from all major countries. It will be an exception if a country does not accept Bitcoin. It will be an exception if there is capital gains tax on Bitcoin. I think that's something that will go away with time, as game theory will do, because all those Bitcoiners, if you bought like 5 years ago 1 Bitcoin, and that 1 Bitcoin is, Michael Saylor says, 2045, bull case, almost 50 million. That 1 Bitcoin is all of a sudden 50 million worth. You don't want to pay like $10 million taxes on that. You're trying to figure out a way to get to another jurisdiction and then sell the Bitcoin. So the game theory will eliminate, or maybe let the capital gains tax on Bitcoin come down in a major way. Right now in Austria, it's 20% capital gains tax on Bitcoin, on the profits of Bitcoins. That's something where I'm like, I'm never selling my Bitcoin in Austria. If I'm selling my Bitcoin, it's somewhere else. If I ever sell my Bitcoin, and I think even though it will be globally accepted and 0.1 Bitcoin will be almost generational wealth, it will be major to have just 10 million Satoshis, or even a million Satoshis will be a substantial amount, even though not generational wealth. That being said, is probably still fiat around. In some regard in 20 years. The network effect that Bitcoin is now building out is really strong. But also the network effect of fiat currencies is really strong. So I think, and I'm hopefully wrong, but I think that even in 20 years, fiat will be to a certain extent still be there, but it will be insignificant, and everyone will acknowledge that fiat is not the way to save your financial energy. It's just a way to pay your taxes. It's just a way, it's like in Turkey or Venezuela or anything of those countries where everyone that has any clue about finances knows you should not save your financial energy long term in the Turkish lira. You're way better off in the US dollar. In the same way, it will be in 20 years so clear just to save your financial energy in Bitcoin. And that's where I kind of see the future. And there's a lot of different paths we can go through, because all of a sudden Bitcoin is globally accepted. Politicians will be pro-Bitcoin. If you are a politician and you're against Bitcoin, you will not be voted for. We see that already happening in the USA. Europe and other countries are slower to that, but USA, I think if a candidate will be voted in November, I think he has or she has to be pro-Bitcoin and not being against it, or at least neutral. So I think a neutral candidate that thinks, oh yeah, innovation is good, I will not ban anything, I will not be against Bitcoin, that's a great stand. And we see it now. Donald Trump was against Bitcoin not that long ago. He's still no Bitcoiner, but he realized that the amount of people in the USA that have Bitcoin is such a substantial amount. There are as much Bitcoiners as there are dog owners in the USA. Imagine the American president candidate, the leading American president, coming out and saying, I'm against dogs. I think we should put more taxes on dog food, and we should put more taxes on leashes of dogs, and dogs should be eliminated. He will never be voted in. Like, he will never be the president, even if he is really good in other things. Like, that's just too big of a majority of the population. I think in America you need something like 70 or 80 million votes to win, something like that I heard. And we have 50 million Bitcoiners in America. Not to say that everyone will vote, but if you really can rally around the Bitcoin crew, you have a major advantage as a candidate. That's why he was at the Bitcoin conference. Let's not be mistaken. Donald Trump is not for Bitcoin because he thinks that will revolutionize the world. He certainly does not. He said it like himself on the stage, yeah, play with your Bitcoin thing. I will not hinder you with that. He's not a Bitcoiner. He's just a president that realized being for Bitcoin is a great thing to do. And in that way, it will also be just across the world, everywhere across the globe in 20 years. And I think you cannot be surviving as a politician being against Bitcoin. You can be for or against some laws regarding how to regulate Bitcoin. Do we have, for example, in China, I think it will not be the same Bitcoin as you have it in America or El Salvador. There will always be, like, having capital controls is also possible in the Bitcoin world with KYC and everything like that. I hope that will change. I hope that's a future we are going through a long term, but that's a whole different battle. Like having no capital controls, nothing in the world, that's a whole different ball game. Bitcoin allows, to a certain extent, this future already. Even in states like China, but it will take a long time. The average Joe in each country has the freedom to do so. If you inform yourself and you're good and savvy with technology, no matter which country you are in, you're fine. Like you can find your way around. I mean, I don't know about North Korea. Might be more challenging there. I would also suggest, as I said before, a Bitcoiner should think of like where they are in the world, because Bitcoin adoption and the Bitcoin standard will be different in different parts of the world. So where is Bitcoin in 20 years? I think it's when you measure it in US dollars, it's way past the 10 million mark, as also Saylor thinks. I think when you measure it in gold, it's at least 2, maybe 4 or 5x of gold. We will have the flippening of gold within the next 5 to 10 years, I think. And then like in 20 years, we will be way past that. And I think Bitcoin will be just an everyday thing, which is so normal. In 20 years, we might already be at the point where Bitcoin is boring. It's like the HTTP protocol. Who likes to talk about that? It's like every day we use it when we visit Twitter. When we are right now, we are on Riverside that uses the HTTP protocol, the TCP/IP protocol. And so we use it every day. We never talk about it. And Bitcoin will also be like that. Like Bitcoin will not be a major topic in 20, 30 years. It will be just there like air. That's a nice sentence. So it will be it will be very interesting. I also like as you have the podcast, and I don't know if Bitcoin is so interesting that I can talk about it in 20 years also, because it might be just it might already have won. It's like, oh yeah, Bitcoin, it's expanding, it's growing, it's the best savings technology in the world. Yeah, why you keep talking every day about Bitcoin? So it will be very interesting to see, and then we can also like think of like, okay, if you want to retire at year 2044, because let's say you are now 35, in 20 years you are 55, how many Bitcoin do you need? Like it depends on like where you want to live, how you want to live, but if you want to have a really secure future, aim for that one Bitcoin. It's for ambition people in the right part in the world, still possible if you're really focused and work hard. But the 0.1 Bitcoin is for me always the aim for everyone. Like right now, everyone can aim for that 0.1 Bitcoin. And that number always comes down. You can probably remember when the number was 6.15. How many people can now get to 6.15 Bitcoin? That's a huge number for anyone. That's like, I don't know, 500,000 euros or dollars or something like that right now. I don't know the exact conversion now, but it will be something like that. So aiming for that, if you really want to retire or be financially free in like 10, 20 years, and 20 years is kind of a nice time frame. Like 10 years is still not that far in the future, and 20 years is like a lot of things happening in 20 years. Let's look at the cell phone, the smartphone. How much happened in 20 years? For 20 years ago, the iPhone was not there. And now we have to lock our iPhones away just so we don't see it for like a few hours, because we are so addicted to that thing. It will be interesting to see the Bitcoin adoption over the next 20 years. It will be like the cell phone adoption, where you could not think of like having Bitcoin at all, and then in 20 years you cannot think of a world without Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is so substantial in our financial system. It's like the car. Yeah, we went from horses to car pretty quick, from like 10 to 90% adoption. It was very quick. It was like 20 years or something like that, 20 or 30 years. And that's something physical, something so big. And Bitcoin is so easy. Like you can adopt Bitcoin today within an hour. Yeah, you can open a bank account, instant bank transfer, verify yourself, or not even that. Go the peer-to-peer route. Come to a Bitcoin meetup, give someone 10 euros and he transfers some Satoshis into your Lightning wallet. You have Bitcoin. Like, it's so easy to get Bitcoin. And so that's where I think Bitcoin is going in the next 20 years. I will also, just a small announcement, I will also write a book about that. I will write, because right now I'm just rambling what's in my head, and I have a lot of thoughts about that, and very deep thoughts also about that, how the world also looks then. And I want to really write that thing down for myself, first and foremost. Right now I have like a Google Docs with like 15 pages where I write like all my thinking in there, but I've not written all the things nicely down. So I will write it everything down, and it probably will be like a book size. I probably will give either a free PDF to everyone, or maybe we'll charge something for that. I don't know. It depends on how much time I put into this book, and if I maybe also sell it as a hard copy and on Amazon or something like that. But I will write for 2044 my theory, how we get there, and where we are getting in 2044, because 20 years it's an interesting time frame. And I really laughed really hard and long when Michael Saylor came out and talked about 2045, like 1 year after that, because I was thinking of 2044 since so long before his presentation. Then I was like, oh shit, now he talked about 2045, but I will keep with 2044, not 2045.
Well, you make some really great points there, and I think a book would be wonderful, because I see you as being one of the young leaders in the space going forward. And, I just like to think, yes, all that's possible. I think governments possibly will fight that, because obviously we've heard that people closest to the money printer benefit the most. So there will be some pushback along the way. What I wonder is how you have such strong conviction. Is this from doing your podcast, talking to many wonderful guests that you have? Where's your conviction from?
I think time. My first day where I told you before about that, where I needed 3 years to get ahead and say like, okay, Bitcoin is not a scam. From there, it took me like a few weeks to get like a substantial amount of my portfolio in Bitcoin, like 5% or something like that. And then it took me another year to get all in and get all shitcoins out of the way, get everything else out of the way. So that took me a long time. And then I thought like, oh, I understand Bitcoin. Little did I know that I did not understand anything about Bitcoin. And I was also not able to talk about Bitcoin. And I still know that I only know the surface and nobody knows more. So like when we talk about technical stuff and the economics of Bitcoin and the global game theory about Bitcoin, that's all so complicated and so deep that we can only scratch the surface. And the great thing is like what I also try with my podcast is like we all kind of think of like we can do that and that and that, and everyone gives his inputs. And when you take all the inputs together, kind of have a picture and a direction where we could go. So that's what I try to do with my podcast. I will also try to do that with the book. I also try to do that with my conviction. So every interaction I have with Bitcoin, every thing that I learn about Bitcoin makes me more bullish. I'm like, oh, that's so genius. Like that's a really good solution. When I learned about the difficulty adjustment, that was a major event for me. Like that's so genius, because I was like, Bitcoin mining, isn't that when the transaction fees are high and then the reward is not coming, isn't that bad? And then I'm like, oh, but there's the difficulty adjustment. Or when a lot of miners go off, oh, there's the difficulty adjustment. Like the difficulty adjustment is an underrated part of Bitcoin, and it's very important to the whole technical thing, keeping up and being alive in Bitcoin. So my conviction comes from experienced Bitcoin, buying Bitcoin, talking with Bitcoiners, experience the fiat system, experiencing with stocks, experience with real estate. I was almost in real estate, talking with people in real estate, talking with Bitcoin and gold and everything, just seeing that's the best and soundest solutions we have right now. So my conviction just comes from that. And I started my podcast. This blew my conviction and my knowledge about Bitcoin just 10x to the sky. Like I knew a lot beginning with the podcast. I knew a lot about Bitcoin already, but then I got to know that I don't know a lot. You have those humbling moments where you're like, what is he talking about? Like, I have no clue what that is. Of course, there are a lot of patterns in the podcast where you like hear that over and over again, but there's always something new in there. And there's always one podcast. I did one on Monday with an astrophysicist who talks about the Lindy effect and price developments and the power law and other stock to flow models. And he combined everything together and talked about all those math models. And I'm like, what the heck is that? 2 hours we talked and I had no clue along the way what is what. Like literally, I was just like a dummy in that 2 hours and asking all the stupid questions. I felt really good in that, because those are the episodes where I grow. Those are the episodes where my conviction grows stronger, where I learn about maybe a new weak point or a new strength point of Bitcoin. And that's where you learn more and get more comfortable with that technology. The conviction just comes from being in Bitcoin, experience Bitcoin. And usually the more time you spend with something, the less interesting it gets. And with Bitcoin, it's the other way around. The more time you spend in there, the more interesting it gets. Like there's another door opening where I don't know about that. There's another door opening that I never went into there. Right now, I'm looking into citizenships, decentralizing my physical nature. And that's a Bitcoin topic that I was not thinking of just like 2 months ago. So, and that's a Bitcoiners that talked with me triggered that. It's not something that came up because I wanted to. It just came up because Bitcoiner around me were talking with me and giving me those inputs. So I'm very, very grateful for the place I am right now, where I have all those amazing people on the podcast, and I can just learn from everyone. And when I then can make a nice podcast from that, where I can, I'm also enabling other people to learn with me from that. That's a great thing, I think. So having that grows my conviction a lot, and I'm already looking forward to the next 5 years what I learn about Bitcoin and life, because it seems like there is every month a new door opening in Bitcoin, and the rabbit hole is just not stopping.
Well, thank you. I understand much better now. We're coming to the end, but I like to focus a little bit more on the beginners and the older generation. How do you talk to your parents about Bitcoin, and are they open to it?
It's funny that you say that, because my average viewer is around 45 to 50 years old. I have 7% of my viewers above 65 years old. That's more than I have under 25 years old. So I'm 25 years old. So you would guess without the statistics that I have more under 25 than over 65, but actually not. So I'm amazed how mature the Bitcoiner community already is. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of people under 30 are still playing a lot with crypto outside of Bitcoin. But I feel like people even above 30 and maybe above 40 get it quicker because they get the problems of the fiat system. A 20-year-old guy that is just now entering the workplace in Austria, he doesn't get what's wrong with the fiat system because he did not experience what's wrong with the fiat system. He doesn't care about inflation rates. He probably even lives with his parents. Like he doesn't have to pay for anything really. You, as an adult, you have a major advantage against some of the young folks, because you experienced life, you experienced the fiat system the last 50 years, and you know how bad it is. If you don't know about it, then you're then not delusional, but then you. I always try to remember that I should spread Bitcoin with love and not hate. I think you're just missing out on something. Like you're not really asking hard questions, like why do prices go up and stuff like that. So if you are older than 30 or 40 years old, you understand way better what's up with the fiat system. So when I talk with my parents have both Bitcoin, they both are fans of it. My dad understands it deeper because he understands gold a lot more. My mom, moreover, buys it because she loves me and she believes in me and so supports me. and I make her buy here and there Bitcoin because I think it helps her. But it's less understanding of the financial system. My dad really gets the being sovereign and really gets this side of things. He doesn't understand Bitcoin on a technical level. And you don't have to. Like you can use Facebook without knowing how the TCP/IP protocol works, and you can use Bitcoin without knowing how the protocol on a base layer works. A lot of other people try to break Bitcoin. You don't have to try to break Bitcoin. But if you are capable of doing that, like try it. Like we always need people that test the network, do the ball. What I generally try when I talk with people, no matter the age, but it's easier with older actually. With younger people, either they respect you and they have like they see you as a role model or something. Then it's easy. Then you're just like, oh yeah, I'm a Bitcoiner, and then you're like, yeah, okay, I want also be a Bitcoiner. But if you talk with someone who has maybe a house and they have some extra cash or something like that, that I always try to do is asking them some things. Like there's there are two ways to it. Like the one way is asking what's wrong with the world today. Like what do you think is wrong with the world today? And then you can relate that back to the Bitcoin. But also if they're interested in Bitcoin, ask them first some standard question like, oh, what do you think of inflation? If he says, oh yeah, like 5% inflation is fine, then don't talk about Bitcoin. You have to start with you have to start way sooner than that. You have to start about the economic system and stuff like that. So the first 5 hours are probably not even about Bitcoin with that person. But if he says like, oh yeah, it's bad, like they steal our purchasing power from that, then you have a start. Like he knows that the fiat system has some crooks and is not good and is not perfect. So find out where he is, where she is in the journey, and from there you can go. And that's a great thing with Bitcoiners. They have so many angles to explain Bitcoin, and that's what I always try to get across. Like, you also at a certain time didn't understand Bitcoin. I did not understand Bitcoin. And someone who has not yet understand Bitcoin is not stupid. He is just not yet informed. Like he is yet to be orange pilled. So don't blame it on him. Don't think bad about him. Just approach it from the most loving perspective and say like, how can I help him? Like, how can I help him understand Bitcoin and make it as good as possible? Like, we need more people that are good salesmen in Bitcoin. We have a lot of the people like, oh, have fun staying poor. We have a lot of them. That's not my attitude. Because if I meet someone who truly needs Bitcoin, I take my time with them. If I meet someone who doesn't need Bitcoin because he has 50 houses and he's a big portfolio, if he asks me about Bitcoin, I will tell him about Bitcoin. But he is not the person that I'm most compassionate with and say like, oh, you have to get Bitcoin. Because if you orange pill someone, it's not for Bitcoin, it's not for yourself, it's for them who gets it. So it's like a selfless act to explain Bitcoin to someone else, because you don't get anything from that. I mean, with my podcast, I get something from that, but I don't orange pill with my podcast. It's more like, I probably orange pill with my podcast, but the podcast is more like I find out more about Bitcoin, and I'm in this amazing situation where I actually get paid for doing that, and other people get value so much from that. But from normal orange pilling, you don't get anything from that. Like, you get a thankful person in 10 years from that. If you actually orange pill someone, and in 10 years time, and you are the one person that got him in Bitcoin, this one person will be very thankful to you and very grateful to you. So that's what you get. You get friends in 10 years. You might get enemies in 1 year if Bitcoin is down that 1 year. And you're like, oh, why did you get me that Bitcoin? It's now down 30% and it's so volatile and I hate it. But if they stick to it and you explain it well with the volatility and everything, you get a friend in 10 years. So Bitcoin is a long game. And that's why I also say, don't be too aggressive. Like, Bitcoin can go down. Like, never force anyone or almost force anyone in there, because make them interested in Bitcoin. And if they are interested, then explain it to them. Don't force it onto anyone. Like, if he's not interested in, he probably will not buy it anyways. Like, it's almost impossible and very hard to convince someone of something he really doesn't get, if he really is interested in it. If he's interested in Bitcoin, but he has all those weird things about it in his head, then you can work with something because he's interested. He's willing to learn. But if he's not willing to learn, don't waste your time. There's so many other people outside there that want to learn about Bitcoin. You don't have to spend all your time on someone you know he's not willing to. And if there's also, sorry for taking so long, there's also one more caveat to that. If that person happens to be your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your husband or your father or your son, even, or something that you really care about, take it slow. Like, don't force them into Bitcoin. Like that just makes your relationship to him bad. If you are forcing him into it, he will not learn it. He will get it. He will come around. My girlfriend is not yet orange pilled after me being with her for 1.5 years already, but she gets it every time a little bit more. She has her Lightning wallet, and I give her every now and then some satoshis, so she sees the value grow, even though it's a very small amount. And she just picks up things when I'm in the podcast. She just picks up things when there's a Bitcoiner coming to my house and we are talking about Bitcoin. So she will get orange pilled. I don't have to force her into it. She has no option anyway. She will get it at some point. So don't force anyone into that. That's, if you have the cure to cancer and you have someone that has cancer, at some point he will get your cure of cancer. You just have to wait till he really understands, oh shit, I have cancer. Shit, you have the cure for it. Oh shit, I will take your cure for cancer. It's just a matter of time till they come around. So be patient, be loving, and never judge anyone. Don't hate.
I love that, Robin. I hear meet people where they are. I think you have a gift to seeing where people are, and you're an old soul to be starting so young. And I think that's a great place to end. So just tell everyone where they can find you.
I usually have my Robin Seyr t-shirt on, where's my name written like Robin, as you write Robin, not with an I, with an I. A lot of people write me like that, and Seyr, S-E-Y-R. That's really easy, but you can probably put my name somewhere in the description or something like that. And that's how you find me on every platform. Just look out for the real account. There are a lot of scams and imposters out there, but like at Robin Seyr, just written together, no points, no lines, no anything, just Robin Seyr. And any platform, it's YouTube and Twitter and all the other platforms. On the other platforms, I'm not that active on. So if you want to listen and watch me on the podcast daily, YouTube is the best platform to do that. You have the best experience there. I put the most energy in there, but I'm also on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Podcast, and stuff like that. It could just take a while if you have a reply or a comment there. And if you want to reach out to me, have an idea or whatever, or you just want to ask me a question, X is the best place. Like, my DMs are open for anyone, like everyone, even if you're not verified, even if I don't follow you, everyone can message me and I get back to everyone if it's a genuine thing, even if it's ungenuine, but if it's something that's not a scam or bot. So I get back to everyone actually, and just write me and I will get back to you. I'm at the stage where I still can get back to everyone. So I will do that as long as humanly possible. My girlfriend always says I spend too much time replying to people, but I think it's a time that's well worth it, because I spend sometimes 1 to 2 hours every day just replying to comments, replying to X replies, replying to DMs. But I like that. I love that. Those are my folks. Those are my friends. And even though some of them I never met online, I love every one of them. And so I like to get back to them. So reach out to me, message me. I'm always available.
Well, thank you so much. I'll put a link to your Twitter and your podcast and YouTube below. Thanks for joining us, Robin.
Thank you so much. It was great, Paula.
Thank you.